Check one, 2, 3. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. Okay, my guest today is a freelance sound mixer based in Atlanta, Georgia. Please welcome Jimmy Gilmore.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Glad you could be here. All right, Jimmy, we always kind of start the show off by talking about what's in your audio kit. So just kind of give us a rundown of everything that you use on set.
Well, I use a Sound Devices 664 is my main recorder, and I use a lot of Lectrosonics wireless. My boom microphone, I have a couple of Sennheisers, including an MKH-416, which is sort of my outdoor mic, and I have some AKGs, 460Bs, that I use often as interview mics. Occasionally I use, for drama, the MKH-50, and for lav mics, I use a lot of Sankens and DPAs.
Well, tell us a little bit about your power distribution.
Okay, for my cart, I just got a Meon, which is pretty cool. That allows you to plug in and unplug, and you can get 3 to 4 hours or maybe longer of power for the cart. And then for the bag, I have a Remote Audio BDS. I use NP batteries for that.
All right. For some of our listeners that maybe don't know much about the Meon, tell us a little bit about that.
It's a big battery that's rack mounted. It's made by Remote Audio. It's similar to a device that PSC makes for cart power. I forget what they call it, like a Zeus or something. And it's just some giant batteries that are in an enclosure, and it has a meter on the front that tells you how much time you have left approximately and how much power you're draining from the system. It's pretty nice that you don't have to worry so much about, am I going to run out of power? Do I need to change this battery before we do the next take? Which has happened to me, like, oh, it rolled, and then you start hearing that beep, beep, beep. Oh no, am I going to make it through this take? So it's nice to have that sort of, freedom from worrying about whether or not you're going to run out of power.
Yeah. Well, what type of timecode boxes do you like?
Right now, I'm using some MozeGear ones, which are fine. I would like to upgrade sometime, which I'm not sure how soon that's going to be with all that's going on too. I really like the Betso system. Looks really cool. That allows you to not have to, go up and check the camera to make sure that the time code hasn't slipped, or they've unplugged something, or battery's going dead and you can't see it. With them, it has a master clock that wirelessly sends time code to that and to the slate. So that's where I would like to go right now. I'm pretty happy with the MozeGears, and I have that, and I have a Deneke slate, and they're all pretty bulletproof as far as working and holding time code. So I'm pretty happy with them.
Okay. What's your specialty when it comes to recording sound?
I wouldn't say I have a specialty. I have clients that call me back, and what they do a lot of is commercials and corporate stuff. So, that's kind of the thing I get repeat business on. And then just a lot of random stuff. I recently worked on an educational film about autism. It was with a crew of people from England. Did another documentary a few months ago about this strange little town we have where they used to burn crosses. So it's really all over the place. And I like that. I like learning about different stuff while I'm working. Learned all sorts about dyslexia that I had no idea about, because I'm recording sound for a random client. So I enjoy that. I do enjoy more narrative stuff as well. And I guess if I could do whatever I wanted to, maybe I'd do more of that. I don't know. But I would say probably 50% or more of my work is, commercials or corporate. And then it's sort of all across the board.
All right. Now, did you work on a documentary called The Black Godfather?
I did. Yeah, it was just basically interviews. We interviewed some high profile people, one of which was Andrew Young, and that's another sort of thing where you get to learn things that you never would have working in this business. Sitting there for a 5-hour interview of a civil rights leader, and wow, I never knew that. That's kind of what makes me still interested in doing the job. I enjoy the technical side of it, but the fact that you're interacting with people that are not boring makes it all that much more enjoyable.
What has been the most interesting project you've worked on so far?
One that was kind of interesting. Last summer, I worked on a short film, and it turned out kind of interesting. It was very difficult project. It was the hottest month of summer here, and we were working in some unpleasant locations, bugs, and a house that probably had to be over 100 degrees inside. And it was one of those that you just think, this might actually turn out okay. I'm not really sure. And then 6 months later, I hear that, it's been shortlisted for the Golden Globes, and it won this award and that award. That was a nice surprise. It was, the director was kind of an interesting cat. It was a lot of fun, but it was also like really, really difficult in that I was understaffed, basically doing a 2-person job myself, but it was a lot of fun. That one was called A Million Eyes. It's kind of cool to see that have some success. I'm not sure how long it ended up to be, probably somewhere between 12 and 20 minutes. I mean, I think it worked out really well for the director. I think he's got some other projects going on now that are higher profile.
Any particular miking challenges you remember?
Just booming. They had these really long dolly runs, and just trying to boom those accurately with, I'm working around a dolly holding a bag, and they've got like a 20-foot dolly run. It would be hard for just a boom op. And then trying to do that. And another one, they had another move, wasn't quite as long, but it was in the middle of it was supposed to be a prison lunchroom. And they actually rented a prison that was shut down. They had one conversation when the kid enters the room, and then he walks with his lunch tray to another table. And so I have a PA turning the pot down after he talks to the first character. And then I walk over, follow the kid over to the next table, and then he turns the pot up on the second character or the third character. So that was really difficult. And it should have been me at a cart with a boom op, but sometimes you take these jobs, and I guess some mixers out there, I know they're listening going, Jimmy, why did you take that job? You shouldn't have accepted that job. You should have demanded a boom op. Yes, in retrospect, I probably should have.
And they never put the boom op on a dolly as well. Wouldn't that be great?
I actually rode a Chapman dolly about a month ago.
Oh, that's good.
It was a situation like it was a corporate job. Again, probably should have had a boom op. Most of it wasn't very difficult, but they had one move with this dolly, again, following somebody through a lunchroom area, and there was just no way for me to swing the boom and not either cast a shadow or get in the way of the dolly. So they just put me on the dolly. So I rode next to the camera operator. That was kind of fun. And it made it a lot easier. It was no problem. I had the bag was in my lap and just, holding the boom out there. So that was much easier. We should get our, what do they call them? Sound grips. We should get some sound grips to push our dollies. That would make our life easier.
That'd be nice. Yeah, because we're always like walking back to one. The dolly's already there. Camera's waiting as we get back. And then we take it back, and then we walk back again. They just roll it on down.
Yeah. Well, next time, just ask if you could ride along. These bigger dollies, they can pull out an extra seat for you. Yeah, I didn't know I could ride along, but they let me ride along that time. So now I'm asking.
That's great. Well, tell us about fluid films.
Okay, so I guess this goes back to how the heck did I end up as a sound mixer? I guess about 12 years ago, I was working in a ad agency as a writer producer. So basically that meant that there were certain projects that came into the agency where they needed somebody to actually execute them as well as write them. And so if it was a larger budget thing, get on a plane, go out to LA and shoot a fancy commercial. And if it was a lower budget, they would have to try and figure out some way to do it either in-house or locally. So that's what I was doing there. And then the agency sold. They said, Jimmy, we don't need you anymore. So I just started working with some of my old colleagues and clients, sort of as an independent writer producer. And I did that for a few years. I basically found that if I was having a problem on a production, like staffing and budgeting, it was often sound. That my clients could say, that shiny camera, yeah, I understand why that costs a lot of money, but the sound thing that I can't see, it's invisible. It should just magically be recorded perfectly. They didn't understand why. I need to budget $1,200 for that. Really? Why? And so instead of being able to convince them that they needed to spend the money, I just kind of started buying sound gear and figuring out if they're not going to pay fully for it, and I'm going to have to figure out how to deliver it, because otherwise my product's going to be awful. I can't have that. So if I had a client that agreed to a budget, I would hire one of my friends to come in and do the audio. And if I couldn't, I would figure out how to do it myself. And then after, a few years, I ended up having some pretty nice sound gear, and then occasionally getting calls, hey, Jimmy, can you come and do sound for this? And that eventually just turned into me saying, hey, this is way less of a hassle doing sound than producing a whole project myself and constantly being undercut and basically spending a lot of time doing stuff I didn't want to do. So I'm fully embraced the dark side and have moved on to sound.
Now, did you run camera as well, or are you primarily producing, writing?
I just did whatever. If the budget was higher, I would primarily stick to the creative side of things. And if the budget was lower, I would get into the weeds on the technical stuff. That usually meant just anything that needed to be done. I usually find somebody is an assistant who wanted to do camera. So I could staff that a little easier than, say, audio. So oftentimes it would be me doing the sound and then somebody else running the camera and helping with lighting and all that on a smaller project. And then a bigger one, it could, I could have a crew of, 10 or 15. It just really depended. But, in sound, you get to just kind of focus on one thing. And if you have a team member, you're usually not 1099ing that person and doing books and paying them. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy about not producing, is not having to worry about the stuff that I really don't enjoy. And that's taxes and bookkeeping and paying people and collecting so that I can pay people. So while I do like the creative part of it, I really don't like the part of it that is the, sort of the hard business stuff. And also find that in sound, usually when you're negotiating with somebody, they've already got the budget. They've already probably hired the camera operators. They probably picked out the camera, the lenses, the lights. You're kind of the last person they get to. And it makes the negotiating a lot less complex because you're just sort of that last thing that they need to take care of, if it's not a client that you usually have. So I have some clients that call me. They know how much I cost. I'm not really negotiating with them. And, they'll say, hey, are you available this day? And then I'll hear back from them as that date approaches, and they'll send me, a purchase order or a deal memo or whatever. But when it's a new client, it's oftentimes, they're coming to Atlanta, or, they've got a shoot booked already, and, they don't want to spend a lot of time negotiating. They just kind of want to, check that last box. I don't know that a lot of sound people kind of realize that, hey, these people they just really generally want to get the deal done. They don't want to go around and around with you most of the time. If you just say, hey, my rate's this really high rate and I'm available, that's all they really want to know. They may say, well, how much is a Comtech or how much is a Slate? And they may try and get you to work with a little bit on the gear rental, but it's not the kind of long, drawn out negotiation that I often had when I was bidding for producing jobs, where you have to list out like all the different cameras and locations and actors, and it's a lot simpler.
Having been a producer and then being down the line, as sound mixer, how did that influence the way you record sound?
Well, I don't know that it's really different than the way anybody else looks at it. I guess you could give me your opinion, but I'm just trying to make sure that I give editorial something that they can use. That's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm trying to just get as clean of isolated tracks as I can get in a decent mix for somebody when they're in looking at dailies. So I don't know that that's really different. I think maybe on set, I'm kind of aware of maybe that the producer probably doesn't really want to hear from me because they've got a thousand things going on in their mind, and they're thinking about the executive producer or the client or the actor, or, they've got a million things going on, including, how am I going to get lunch for all these people on time? So I guess it affects me mostly in just trying to be aware that person that I'm working for probably just wants to hear from me as little as possible. Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, my background, too, is, I was heavily involved in the creative side. So, I guess it just depends on what everybody's background is.
Yeah, well, I think you kind of have to be paying attention to camera and lighting, or you're gonna get you're gonna have some problems. And there's always that sort of tension between camera and the sound department. But I try to pay attention to what they're doing so that I can be ready when I need to be. I try to make sure that above all that I'm prepared to deliver what I need to do when the time is ready. I figure everybody can wait all day on camera and be okay with it because they can see what camera's doing. But clients and producers and directors really don't want to wait on sound. They're thinking, okay, we've been over here busting our butts, getting this shot set up for the last 45 minutes to 3 hours, however long. And if you're not ready to go when they're ready to go, they're like, well, what have you been doing? So can you hear my dog barking?
I can. That's all right.
So anyway, that's sort of the way I approach it, is like, always be prepared. Nobody wants to see you sweating. Nobody wants to see you not paying attention. I think those are the kind of the things that producers are kind of aware of is, does our sound guy, does he look like he knows what he's doing? Because they can't see if you know what you're doing. They're like looking, does he look confident? Does he look like he knows what he's doing? And I think whenever I've had difficult relationships with producers where, they didn't understand where I was coming from, or maybe they just didn't like me, which does happen to every sound person. Every relationship with a producer is not going to be great. It's just not going to happen. It's usually if I was caught off guard, or one step behind for whatever reason, like maybe not even something that's my fault, but, I don't know that they're going to move the camera over there and nobody told me. So I'm like bringing up the rear and, the perception is, oh, well, he's not on the ball. And I think it's kind of unfair, for sound people that nobody can see that you're doing a good job. So you just kind of have to project that you're doing a good job, if that makes any sense.
Actually, I saw a meme the other day, and it was something like for the sound department, it was like, sound has to get it right every take, but camera just needs to get it right once that they like. So we're always on.
Yeah, especially now that it's like everybody wants to roll on the rehearsal. So if, you need to work out a boom move, and your dance with the camera, you better figure it out because they're going to roll on that first quote camera rehearsal. They're going to roll on it. And, chances are the camera really needed the rehearsal anyway, but you're kind of under the gun to get it right every time, like you said.
Now, did you have any mentors that kind of guided you along the way?
I cannot say enough, like how lucky I am to be in Atlanta. We have a pretty amazing sound community here. I don't think we don't have as many people as in LA and probably not New York either, but there's just a ton of really talented sound people in Atlanta that are working on everything from, news to, the latest Marvel movie. So I've had the good fortune of having a lot of really smart, intelligent, good sound people, around giving me advice throughout the years. And we have a Facebook group here that's very supportive as well. And they have the Mixer. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they have a big party at True in the 479 Union Hall every year. It's well attended. Even, the people from Lectrosonics and various other vendors, they come here, True and Gotham. And so there's a really strong community here. And, if you have a question or you need to know, how do I build this package, or do you have any advice about what piece of equipment for this? I mean, there's really a hive mind of talented people here. So I don't want to single out any one person, but there's a really strong community of people here. So I feel fortunate. It's kind of right place, right time for me to be in this business. So I'm pretty fortunate.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I went up to, it's been a couple years. I went up to, they had a workshop at True one Saturday, a location sound workshop. And that was a blast. I got Glenn True was there and a number of, really talented mixers. And so, yeah, it was a great experience. So,
I mean, there's people here that do the highest profile work in the world right now, really. I mean, if people in Atlanta are mixing the Marvel stuff, it's literally the highest profile stuff going on. It's a pretty unique community, a pretty unique time and place. And, hopefully it all continues after, what's going on now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what are some expendables that you like to use when you're wiring talent?
I always just kind of look at what they're wearing and then try and figure it out. It's kind of like a puzzle. I guess like everybody, I've got some of those RM11s in my kit, Moleskin, Joe Sticky, Bumblebee mounts, Ursa mounts, foamies, all sorts of stuff. One of the things that I've started using in the past couple of years that's really saved me a lot of time is those hide-a-mic bra mounts. I can't say enough good about those things. And it's a couple of weeks ago before the work stoppage, I was working on that dyslexia project. And we had a bunch of different female teachers, and being able to just, they're not professionals. So I'm not going to be touching them, especially like since this virus thing was starting to come out. So what I did is in front of them, wiped down the mic with alcohol and wearing gloves and then handed them the bra mount and just told them what to do. And when I work with non-professionals, it's just been, really great to just hear, this is what you do. And then it sounds great. 9 out of 10 times it sounds great. that's one of the things that I can point to is like, yeah, that's really been a great piece of kit.
Yeah, I think I saw on your Instagram account, and you put a little piece of tape on the bra clip.
Oh yeah. So I noticed like that people can, because they're not professionals, they're not used to this stuff. If you hand it to them and then they just, they yank down on it, the mic instead of the wire instead of the clip itself, they can pull it out. And then you got a dangling lav, and then you're troubleshooting and it doesn't sound good. And if you just take a little piece of, I just use transport and just put it around there, and it'll keep it from getting yanked out.
I do like the idea of like what you were saying, you had gloves on, you had a alcohol wipe, and you wiped it down for them right in front of them. That's a great idea.
I think we kind of now have to start thinking about, well, how are we going to be operating when things come back? Is it going to be standard practice to wipe everything down? The last week or so that I was working before, everything ground to a halt, I started doing that. I couldn't find surgical gloves or medical gloves, so I had to go to Home Depot and get some latex gloves. And I always have alcohol swabs. I think it's a good practice to wipe your microphones down anyway. Yes, it can dry them out, but if you're in a situation where you have to turn over and give it to another talent, which I think a lot of us find ourselves in that situation where, producers want to wire 10 people a day, and not everybody has 10 lavs to go through every day. But in the future, what situation are we going to find ourselves in? Are we going to have a lav for, a dedicated lav and transmitter for every talent? Maybe lav, but dedicated transmitter for every talent seems a little much. But what's going to be considered safe? And as sound people, we're one of the departments that actually has to get right up on top of people. A lot of times it's not possible to tell somebody, do this with the mic. You generally have to actually touch them. And are we going to be needing to do that with mask on and gloves from now on? What is going to be the protocol to stay safe? There was a guy I work with who I was checking in with a week ago, and he was about to be tested for COVID-19. There's a woman that I know just from the business here in Atlanta who's got it. There's a boom op here whose wife has it. I read that on Facebook that a makeup artist is in the hospital with it. So it's, really affecting a lot of people, and that we can't do our job remotely. We have to do it with large groups of people in close proximity. And it's hard to know how all this is going to change the way we work.
Yeah, our world is changing. It's going to be different on the other side of this thing.
Yeah, I haven't heard from I haven't really heard from anybody who is working that's not doing news. I do some news freelancing, and I know a couple other people that I've reached out to that do it. And it seems like if they're not like actual network people, they don't seem to be working. I suspect it'll look a little different when we get back.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's talk about your worst on-set experience. And it could be equipment issue. It could have been working with a difficult producer, director. Your call, and you don't have to use any names. You can keep it all.
Okay, so I would say hands down, the worst experience I ever had was I agreed to cover for another mixer, and they said, I want you to use my gear. And so not only did they make me late by getting their gear, they also, didn't give me time to set it up properly. And then I got stuck behind a police funeral motorcade. And so I showed up to set literally like 15 minutes before they were ready to roll, and with a box full of gear that was not set up. And the producer hated me after that. And so I got good audio, and the project turned out all right. But I, had basically a bad relationship with the producer from, the minute I guess I accepted that job on the terms that I did. I guess the lesson for me there was, if you're going to do a job, do it on your own terms so that you can know that you can be on time and have functional gear. I'm not one for renting a lot of gear just because I want to at least have time to troubleshoot and make sure everything's working properly.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I hate being late, whether it's my fault or somebody else's. I just, it's like it stresses you out. You haven't even gotten there yet, and you're already, on edge. Like you said, if the producer or director is all fired up, that doesn't help either.
Yeah, I was just on a job recently, and the camera department the whole department showed up on set an hour late, and they said, "Well, we had to go somewhere and get gear, and you didn't know that was going to cause you to be an hour late." I just didn't understand that kind of thinking. Of course, it was the last day of a multi-day shoot, and they didn't care. I think every other person on the set did care, and they'll remember that. So it's very good practice to I think, be early. 15 minutes early is on time. If there are any young people listening, there's nothing that reflects on you like you don't care, like showing up late. It just sends the message that I have more important things to do than be at my job on time. Even if it's not your fault, even if you're stuck in a police motorcade, it still says I didn't care enough to be ahead of the motorcade.
Yeah, I like to be an hour early if I can, and if you got extra time, go grab something to eat, or do something. Go to the bathroom somewhere, whatever. But yeah, sometimes I plan to be an hour, and because of traffic or some other issue, I'm not an hour, and so things happen. So it's just good to plan ahead and plan for plan for delays. And if you're there early, great.
Yeah, it really depends on where you are. I would guess like Orlando, where you are, you probably have pretty bad traffic like we do here in Atlanta.
Yeah, it can be ugly.
So I kind of figure if I'm driving 10 miles from my house and it's rush hour, I probably do need to leave an hour early. If I have a shorter drive, I plan whatever, but I generally look at Waze, and if I know I'm going across town or through heavy traffic, I give myself plenty of extra time. I don't know. This might be kind of boring talk for our audience.
No. I think it's important for people to hear that.
So worst experience was definitely traffic and making promises that I wasn't able to fulfill because I wasn't in control. I didn't set proper terms.
Well, if you could give some advice to some people just getting started in production sound, what advice would you give?
I guess just talk to people. One of the things I've been fortunate in that one of my lifelong friends, Chris Mills, is also a mixer. And I've learned so much just having the odd conversation with him. We talk about other things, but we talk about production a lot. And just talking to other mixers and professionals and being curious and learning as much as you can. One of the areas that I think will be more and more important for mixers to learn about is managing radios, RF. Be curious about that stuff. I think, you came from a studio background and you knew all about managing gain structure and the components of a system and wiring things and miking things. But I think one of the things that, sort of isn't traditionally thought of as sound is wireless. And I think that's becoming more and more important with all the changes from the FCC. I've been spending some time over this wonderful break that we're having, brushing up on some of that stuff as well, learning a little bit more about antennas and managing lots of wireless.
Yeah. I think sometimes too is, especially when you've been using the gear for a long time, like I have Lectrosonics, and and I'd been using it for years. So you get a new set, you kind of, scan through the stuff and then you start using it. And I went back and I had some free time as well. And I started reading the manual cover to cover, and I discovered a few things that I did not know. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. So yeah, it's so important to read the manuals, experiment, try different things, and not just expect it to work, for sure.
Yeah, I've been on the Facebook groups a lot over the last couple of weeks, and Atlanta mixer Michael Wynn had a post where he had a conversation with Glenn True, and that's one of the things Glenn said. It's a good thing to do while you're on break is just read the manuals. learn some stuff about your gear that you might not know. There's probably a couple things that it does that you don't know it does. I'm sure that's true for my mixer. I've been using it for a while now, and I'm sure there's a few little tricks that I don't know. That's one thing I've been doing a lot. And another thing I've been boning up on my soldering skills. I've never really been in an emergency situation where, oh no, that cable failed, I don't have a backup. But I think there's always that possibility that, you're going to be on a job and a cable breaks and, oh, I don't know how to solder a 5-pin LEMO. Well, I'm going to learn. Why not learn stuff while we're down? Another thing I would recommend people do is Dante. I spent some downtime about a year ago doing their online tutorials, and they have like a certification. And I went through I think I did 2 levels of certification, and Dante is being integrated with more and more things these days. And it's not necessary to know it for everybody right now, but I think it's coming, with having to manage as many wireless channels as we do for some commercials and for drama. It's going to be more and more important. And the new Lectrosonics, I guess the newest Lectrosonic stuff is all digital, and the newest sound devices stuff now is integrating Dante, and Kantar has Dante. It's basically networking for audio, and you can plug this in here and that over there, and they all kind of work just like a computer network. So it makes you able to do things where a giant patch bay would have been necessary a few years ago, where you can just plug in a couple networking cables and accomplish a lot. So I would recommend learning that, and anything you can learn about wireless. Here in Atlanta, we're definitely seeing some TV stations move around, and I don't know exactly what's going where and how it's changing, but I do see different stuff when I scan now than I did a year ago. So I think it's definitely important to learn more about managing lots of wireless together, because now on set sometimes you've got talk back to your boom operator. You can have 5, 6 or more channels of wireless you're operating yourself. You've got IFB going to producers and script supervisors. You've got cameras with wireless. You've got Video Village may have wireless monitors, follow focus. Everybody's got a phone. You got a lot of stuff on set that can cause you problems. The better you can learn about how all that works together, the better off you're going to be.
Absolutely. All right, that's good stuff. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, anything that you'd like to mention, anything specific?
Yeah, I think I'd like to say that, everybody to stay positive. I don't know what you were doing during 9/11 or the last financial crisis, but we've seen some pretty bad times, in the creative businesses. I was working in advertising during 9/11 and then the financial crisis. And we definitely, there were a lot of people laid off. A lot of people lost work, and it was, difficult, but it comes back. And I think that as creators of content, we might not see a super fast turnaround, but we may. It's going to turn around and it's going to get better. We just have to stay positive. We have to be ready when it does. So, I think you're doing a service, getting information out there, helping people learn their jobs better and to be stronger mixers. There may be fewer mixers when this is all over. Some people might say, hey, this just isn't worth it. I'm going to go work at UPS or Amazon or whatever. But it's going to come back, and everybody's streaming stuff right now. And there's going to be high demand for more stuff to stream, more content. And the people who are prepared once this thing turns around are going to be in good shape. But, we got at least a couple weeks, probably a couple months or more of uncertainty ahead of us. And I think if we can stay positive and support each other and, learn from each other and provide emotional support, like call your friends, say, hey, how are you doing? Want to check in, make sure you're okay. Because, everybody takes it differently. Everybody has a lower or higher threshold for this kind of thing. Some people, some of your friends might need a call. So that's about all I've got.
Yeah, the good words. No, I think that's good to reach out to your friends and coworkers and connect and make sure everybody's doing all right. Well, Jimmy, as we kind of wrap things up here, what's the best way for people to connect with you online?
I'm on Instagram at Jimmy Gilmore, Twitter at Jimmy Gilmore, maybe on Facebook at the same thing. That's JIMMYGILMORE, and jimmygilmore.org. I think a realtor has .com, so I got stuck with .org.
All right, cool. All right, I want to say thanks to Jimmy Gilmore for being on the show today.
Hey, thank you so much, Michael. It was a real pleasure to talk to you. And next time you're up here in Atlanta for the barbecue or whatever, give us a shout, and I'd love to meet you in person.
Definitely, we'll do that. And I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening. If you have questions or would like us to discuss a particular topic, email us at locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.